I want you to picture something really specific for a second. I want you to visualize the last time you were sitting across from a parent or maybe a sibling or a grandparent.
Right, just a really standard family setting.
Exactly. Maybe it was, across the Thanksgiving table and you're just picking at a piece of pie. Or maybe you were just sitting in the passenger seat of their car watching the road go by while the heater blasted.
Yeah, those really enclosed, intimate spaces.
Right. And they turn to you and they ask a really simple forward question. They just say, "Are you doing okay?"
Oh, man. The loaded question.
It is. And I want you to focus on the physical sensation that hits you in that exact microsecond. Because there is a very specific tightness that forms right at the base of your throat, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's a completely visceral reaction.
Like your brain instantly initiates this high-speed scan through all the massive stress you're currently carrying. Your career doubts, a relationship that is slowly suffocating, your financial anxiety.
The overwhelming sense that you are just entirely lost in your own life.
Yes. You feel the weight of all of it all at once. And yet, before you even make a conscious, rational choice, your mouth just opens and you say, "Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's good."
You instinctively swallow the truth.
You do. Even when everything inside of you is completely falling apart, you just lie.
It is an incredibly universal experience. I mean, if you step back and look at it objectively, it's a profound contradiction, right?
How so?
Well, from the moment we're born, the cultural narrative basically dictates that family is the ultimate safe harbor. It's supposed to be this baseline of unconditional acceptance.
Right, the whole family is everything idea.
Exactly. And yet, for a staggering number of people, the family home is the one environment where they feel the absolute least comfortable simply being honest about who they are or, what they're actually experiencing.
And that's exactly the mission of today's deep dive. We are taking a really hard look at the architecture of the family lie.
It's such an important topic.
It really is. We aren't just looking at the surface level reality that we, hide the truth from the people who raised us. We want to get into the mechanics, the deep, hidden neurological and psychological reasons why we actually do it.
And we really need to frame this conversation around a specific window of life, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to focus heavily on those 18 to 35 years, that specific demographic.
Because this is the absolute crucible.
It is. This is the era where you are forging your own identity, making these massive tectonic life shifts in your career, your core values, your romantic partnerships.
And suddenly, communicating those shifts back to your family feels less like having a conversation and more like trying to defuse a bomb while blindfolded.
That is the perfect way to describe it. But to be completely fair, we're going to look at this from a 360-degree view today.
Right, because it's not just a one-sided issue.
Not at all. We are going to dig just as deeply into the parent's perspective, because you simply can't understand the silence of the young adult without unpacking the armor worn by the parent.
What's fascinating here is the sheer contrast in our behavior depending on the environment. I mean, think about this. You might sit next to a total stranger on a 3-hour flight.
Oh, yeah. The airplane seat therapy session.
Exactly. Someone you will literally never see again. And within 45 minutes, you are telling them your deepest fears, your deepest regrets, the wildest dreams you haven't even admitted to yourself.
You're just pouring your heart out while drinking ginger ale at 30,000 feet.
Right. But the simple act of bringing a basic, honest truth to your own family dinner table feels dangerously volatile.
It feels like life or death sometimes.
It really does. So today, we're going to dissect the underlying nature of these family lies. We're going to examine how different generations are operating on completely conflicting definitions of what the word safety actually means.
And most importantly, we are going to map out the psychological mechanics of how to build a bridge of honesty that doesn't, inadvertently burn the entire house down. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with this strange paradox of protection.
Yeah, the idea that lying isn't always malicious.
Right. When we talk about lying to our families, the immediate assumption is that lying is an act of deception, and deception is inherently selfish.
But if we look at the clinical reality of family dynamics, people aren't usually lying out of a lack of love. It's actually the exact opposite.
They do it because they love them.
Exactly. We do it because we love them. It's this intensely misguided form of protection.
Which is such a crucial cognitive reframe, I think. We tend to moralize the act of lying so much.
We do. We run it through this binary filter, like lying is bad, therefore I am a bad person for lying.
But within the complex ecosystem of a family, the lie is very rarely a weapon. It is almost always a shield.
Think about the classic examples we see constantly in the research. Take the college student who entirely conceals the fact that she failed a major prerequisite exam.
Right, the classic hidden report card.
Yeah. She isn't just hiding a letter grade on a piece of paper. She is actively trying to absorb the shockwave to shield her parents from the pain of disappointment.
Or consider the son who is utterly miserable in his corporate career. He's working 60 hours a week, his cortisol levels are through the roof, he's entirely burnt out.
But when he calls home on Sunday afternoon, he puts on this energetic voice and pretends he's thriving.
Exactly. Why? Because he knows his parents sacrificed enormously. Maybe they worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, just for him to get that specific degree.
He is holding the lie to protect the perceived value of their historical sacrifice.
Okay, right. And I see the nobility in that. I really do. But I have to push back here a little bit.
Let's hear it.
Is it really about protecting the family? Or is it fundamentally an act of self-preservation dressed up as altruism?
That's a really sharp question.
Because to me, it feels a lot more like wearing emotional armor. You tell yourself, oh, I'm just doing this to protect my mom from the sharp edges of my truth. I don't want to hurt her heart. But really, if we're being brutally honest, you're terrified of her reaction. You're terrified of the anger, the guilt trip, the heavy, exasperated sigh of judgment that's going to echo through the phone.
You're trying to avoid the fallout.
Yes. You aren't protecting her from the truth. You are protecting yourself from the emotional fallout.
Well, it's a very fair challenge, and the psychological reality is that it's deeply tangled. Self-preservation and protecting the attachment figure are basically inextricably linked.
They feed into each other.
Right. But here is the vital mechanism we have to understand. Silence does not actually erase the truth.
That's a good point.
You might think you're successfully protecting yourself or your parents by keeping your mouth shut,
Yeah.
but what you're actually doing is pushing the truth underground.
And it doesn't just disappear.
No, not at all. When emotional truth goes underground, it doesn't just sit there dormant. It ferments.
Yeah.
It metabolizes into resentment.
Wow. It metabolizes into resentment.
Yeah. And this brings us to one of the most powerful neurological phenomena we experience in families, the regression effect.
The regression effect. I love this concept because I think everyone listening in that 18 to 35 bracket knows exactly what this visceral full body experience feels like.
Even if they've never had the clinical vocabulary to name it.
Exactly. It is the bewildering experience of being a fully independent, highly capable adult, right? Like, let's say you are 32 years old. You manage a team of 15 people.
You navigate complex supply chain issues.
You handle your own mortgage and taxes. You are, by all metrics, a functioning, competent adult.
But the absolute millisecond you get on the phone with your mother or father to deliver even slightly disappointing news, you emotionally and psychologically regress.
It's so intense. Suddenly your heart rate spikes, your palms literally start to sweat, your throat tightens.
You feel exactly like a terrified 7-year-old who just shattered a very expensive vase in the living room and is just waiting for the footsteps down the hall.
Yes, it's wild. And it is so frustrating. Your conscious brain knows you're an adult. You know you pay your own rent. But your body is just slamming the panic button.
It's a complete physical hijack.
It really is. It's like my mom's disappointed sigh literally overrides a decade of premium cognitive behavioral therapy. So what is the actual mechanism there? Why does our biology betray us like that?
Well, because the body keeps the score. Human memory is not just a filing cabinet of facts. It is deeply physiological.
So it's stored in our nervous system.
Exactly. We have to separate declarative memory, which is the facts of what happened, from emotional memory.
Okay, break that down for me.
If you grew up in a home where telling an uncomfortable truth was met with punishment, with shouting, with deep shame, or, and this is often much worse, with emotional withdrawal and the silent treatment.
The silent treatment is brutal.
It really is. If that was your environment, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, wired itself to understand a very simple equation.
Which is?
Honesty equals danger. Danger equals loss of connection.
Wow. Honesty equals danger.
Right. Now, what's profound here is how the brain categorizes threats. To a child, losing the emotional connection of a parent feels exactly the same neurologically as facing a physical predator.
Because to a kid, the parent is literally their survival.
Precisely. A child relies entirely on the parent for survival.
So even though the literal threat is completely gone now, I mean, they can't ground a 32-year-old, they can't take away my car keys, The alarm system is still active.
That's it, exactly. The environment changed, your physical age changed, your bank account changed, but your internal neurological alarm system didn't receive the software update.
It's running on old code.
Yes. When you pick up the phone to say, "I'm quitting my job," your prefrontal cortex, the logical adult part of your brain, knows it's fine. But your amygdala hijacks the system.
It floods your body with adrenaline.
And cortisol, because it still firmly believes that disappointing this specific person is a threat to your actual survival.
Wow. Okay, so you're sitting there carrying this heavy, fermenting underground truth, actively fighting off a physiological panic attack just to say, like, I'm changing my major or I'm moving to a new city with my partner.
It takes a massive toll on the nervous system.
It really does. And a huge part of why that specific truth feels so dangerous goes back to a concept called the invisible script.
Right.
If the body is terrified of breaking the rules, we have to look at what those rules actually are. Let's dive into this, because this mechanism explains the sheer weight of family expectations.
The invisible script is the subconscious, unspoken, but intensely felt syllabus that comes attached to family love.
Right. Because love in a family system is very rarely just pure unconditional acceptance, is it?
No, it almost never is. It is almost always conditional upon adherence to this script, and the script is handed down generationally.
Think about the scripts that might be running in the background of your own family if you're listening. Like, you should be academically and financially successful.
You should get married to a specific type of person by a specific age.
You should fiercely respect tradition. You should absolutely never embarrass the family name in public.
You should be emotionally stoic, or you should be endlessly grateful.
Right. Now, your parents likely didn't write these out on a whiteboard in the kitchen and make you sign a contract when you were 12.
They're usually totally unspoken.
But they are the very oxygen you breathe in that house. They are embedded in the jokes, in the offhand comments, in the reactions to other people's failures.
And this creates an agonizing friction. Because what happens when the truth of who you actually are, or the adult you are currently becoming, no longer fits the lines written in that script?
You're stuck.
You face a nearly impossible psychological choice.
Let's look at a concrete case study to really ground this. Let's talk about a guy named Daniel.
Daniel's story is a perfect example of this.
It really is. So Daniel is a young man whose parents sacrificed basically everything. They immigrated, they worked brutal manual labor jobs, they drove old cars until the wheels fell off.
They gave up their own personal passions.
Also, Daniel could go to an elite medical school. That was the dream, it was the script. And Daniel follows it. He goes. He studies his absolute heart out for 2 years. He's passing his boards.
But on the inside, his nervous system is collapsing.
Completely collapsing. He is completely, profoundly miserable. And he secretly, desperately wants to quit medicine entirely and become a documentary filmmaker.
Now look at the architectural trap Daniel is stuck in here.
It's a massive trap. If he tells the truth, he violates the core script of his entire family lineage. He gets labeled as selfish, ungrateful, and reckless.
But if he continues to hide the truth, he literally sacrifices his own finite existence to play a role he despises.
Right. He just slowly dies inside.
It is a textbook tragedy. And I use the word tragedy in the classical theatrical sense deliberately.
Meaning there isn't a bad guy.
Exactly. In a true tragedy, there isn't a clear villain twirling a mustache. Both sides are operating from a place of entirely justified emotion. Both sides believe they are acting out of pure love.
That's the hardest part to wrap your head around.
Dale's parents look at him and say, "We just want the absolute best for you. We want you to be secure and respected."
And Daniel looks back and says, I recognize your sacrifice, but I just want to live a life that actually feels like mine.
And this is where it gets incredibly tricky. Because you would logically think if both sides genuinely love each other and neither side is malicious, they should just be able to sit down at the kitchen table, have a cup of coffee, and sort it out.
But they can't. The conversations instantly devolve into screaming matches or icy silence. Why?
Yeah.
What is the actual disconnect there?
Because they aren't actually speaking the same language. The conflict is not really about medical school versus film school.
What is it about?
It is a collision between two entirely different, deeply entrenched definitions of what safety means.
Oh, wow. Definitions of safety.
Yes. For the parents, especially parents who have experienced severe hardship, systemic poverty, warfare, or profound instability, safety means stability.
It means a sure thing.
It means a highly secure paycheck, a universally recognized profession, a predictable path. They know exactly how cruel, random, and unforgiving the world can be.
They lived it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when Daniel says, I want to be a filmmaker, they do not hear, I'm pursuing self-actualization and following my passion.
What do they hear?
They hear, I am voluntarily walking off a cliff into poverty and danger and making all of our suffering pointless.
Oh, that is so clarifying. It's like trying to run a modern software app on a legacy operating system.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Right. Like the parents' operating system was built entirely around survival and risk mitigation. That's how they got Daniel to where he is in the first place.
Exactly. The legacy OS is built for survival.
But Daniel is trying to run a totally new update focused on self-actualization and purpose. The system crashes, not because the parent is evil, but because the software is fundamentally incompatible.
That is exactly what is happening. But for Daniel, and for a massive portion of the 18 to 35 demographic safety, means something else entirely.
Because they aren't just trying to survive.
Right. Because their basic survival needs were met, their definition of safety evolved into authenticity.
Authenticity as safety, that's powerful.
It means a profound alignment between who they are on the internal level and what they project on the external level. To Daniel, spending 40 grueling years in a hospital, pretending to be a doctor when his brain is wired to be an artist,
That's a slow death.
that is the ultimate danger to him. That is an agonizing psychological death. So you have safety as stability clashing violently and directly with safety as authenticity.
And when those two definitions collide, the truth becomes an explosive device.
It absolutely does.
So to you listening right now, what stands out to you in that dynamic? Think about the invisible scripts you were handed growing up.
Which ones are still running?
Right. When you think about the arguments that are currently circling your family right now, the unspoken tensions, the passive-aggressive texts, which definition of safety is driving the friction?
Are your parents desperately fighting for your stability while you are screaming at the top of your lungs for your authenticity?
And the inability to reconcile those two conflicting definitions leads to what is arguably the most paralyzing emotion in the entire family system.
The fear of disappointment.
Let's get deeply into disappointment. Because anger is one thing, right? Anger is hot, it's loud, it's an active fight.
There's an energy and a momentum to it.
Exactly. If your dad yells at you, you can yell back. You can push back against anger, but disappointment.
It's totally different.
Disappointment is this quiet, heavy, soul-destroying fog that just settles into the room and suffocates everyone. I mean, think about the most devastating, universally dreaded phrase in the English language.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Ugh. It's a phrase that has crushed millions of spirits.
It really has.
Huh.
And to understand why, we have to look at the psychological subtext. When someone says, I'm angry with you, they are engaged in a conflict with the current living version of you.
They're fighting with what you just did.
Right. They are fighting with your present actions. But when a parent sighs and says, I am disappointed, what they are really communicating on a subconscious level is something much darker.
What are they saying?
They are saying, you are not who I hoped you would be. They are actively mourning the fantasy of who they thought you were going to become.
Oh, that is brutal.
And for a young adult, feeling like your parents are grieving the loss of their imaginary child because of how you actually turned out, that feels dangerously close to an utter withdrawal of love.
Right. It feels like an existential rejection. And to avoid that agonizing feeling, to avoid being the source of their mourning, we start acting.
And we start performing.
We curate these highly specific avatars to interact with our families. We become the good daughter who always agrees and never complains about her marriage.
Or the strong father who never shows fear and always pays the bill.
Or the successful son who always has his act together and never admits he's drowning in credit card debt. We send these avatars to Sunday dinner so our true, messy selves don't have to face that crushing wall of disappointment.
But the psychological damage of this performance is profound. Over time, a terrible mechanism takes over.
What happens?
The family system begins to reward the role rather than the real person.
Let's extrapolate the math of that dynamic because it is incredibly tragic.
Let's do it.
If I'm a kid and I quickly learn that bringing home straight A's, playing the piano without complaining, and maintaining a quiet demeanor results in warmth and affection.
Right, positive reinforcement.
But struggling with math, asking for emotional support, or disagreeing with a political opinion results in a heavy sigh, criticism, and disappointment. I am internalizing a very dark, deeply rooted lesson about my fundamental worth.
You learn that you are only lovable when you are convenient. You learn that love is transactional.
That's exactly it. Love becomes transactional.
Precisely. And so the individual makes a deeply pragmatic, survival-based choice. They choose to prioritize peace over honesty
They choose outward obedience over internal authenticity.
because rocking the boat feels too biologically dangerous. But what they achieve is not actual peace. It is merely the illusion of peace.
It's fake.
It is a highly deceptive, incredibly lonely silence masquerading as harmony. You end up with a family sitting around a beautifully decorated holiday table, smiling, passing the mashed potatoes.
Taking perfectly curated photos for social media.
Exactly. And they are absolutely terrified of truly knowing one another.
Which brings up a really thorny ethical question. Is this dynamic always bad?
It's a fair question.
We've been talking extensively about the deep psychological damage of silence, but let's introduce some real-world nuance here. Are there situations where the family lie is actually necessary?
Like a protective lie.
Yeah, imagine a scenario. What if a family is dealing with a seriously ill grandmother? The adults have spoken to the oncologist and they know the prognosis is incredibly grim,
Right. They have all the medical facts.
but they actively choose to hide the full, frightening clinical medical details from the 7-year-old child in the family. Is that a toxic lie? Is that a betrayal of authenticity?
This is where we have to establish the clinical distinction between betrayal and care. Not all hidden truths are malicious or toxic.
Okay, where is the line?
The defining line comes down to two very specific metrics.
Yeah.
Intent and consequence.
Intent and consequence.
You have to rigorously interrogate yourself.
Mm.
Are you delaying the delivery of this truth to protect someone else's nervous system with genuine compassion? Or are you avoiding the truth entirely to escape your own discomfort and anxiety about having the conversation?
That is a razor-sharp dividing line. It's the difference between filtering for age and filtering for cowardice.
Exactly.
So in the case of the sick grandmother, giving a 7-year-old an hour-by-hour breakdown of litter failure isn't radical honesty. It's just dumping your own trauma onto a child whose brain isn't developed enough to process it.
Right. That would be harmful.
Saying, Grandma is very sick and the doctors are doing everything they can to keep her comfortable is filtering the brutal truth through a lens of compassion.
Exactly. The intent is care, not evasion. However, even in scenarios driven by genuine care, there is a profound systemic risk.
Which is what?
Let's say the adults take it a step further. Let's say they pretend nothing is wrong at all.
Oh, wow.
They paste on fake, rigid smiles. They act overly cheerful around the kid while quietly panicking and crying behind closed doors. Children are incredibly perceptive.
Oh, absolutely. Kids are like emotional Geiger counters. They can't always articulate the facts, but they read the atmospheric pressure of a room instantly.
They feel the tension.
They do. If you pretend everything is totally fine while the ambient tension is thick enough to cut with a knife, you aren't protecting them. You are breeding profound anxiety.
You're actively teaching them not to trust their own somatic instincts.
Their little bodies feel the danger, they feel the grief in the air, but the adults they rely on are telling them, you're imagining things, everything is perfect.
That is a mild form of psychological gaslighting,
Whoa.
even if it is entirely well-intentioned.
Which perfectly encapsulates a golden rule of communication that every family ought to have etched onto their refrigerator door. It goes like this.
I love this quote.
Truth without kindness can become cruelty, but kindness without truth can become manipulation.
It is so foundational.
I want to repeat that because it is the linchpin of everything we're discussing today. Truth without kindness can become cruelty, but kindness without truth can become manipulation.
It's the balance we all struggle with.
I think we all easily grasp how truth without kindness is cruel. We all know that one uncle who proudly declares, I'm just being brutally honest, and then proceeds to use the truth like a baseball bat to bludgeon everyone around him.
Right, that's just aggression disguised as honesty.
Exactly. But that second half, kindness without truth can become manipulation. That is the sneaky, insidious one.
It is, because it feels so virtuous in the moment. Avoiding a difficult, messy conversation by being overly accommodating, by smiling and saying, no, it's fine, really, it's fine, feels like you are being kind.
It feels like you're being the bigger person.
But over a timeline of years, it is highly manipulative, because you are actively denying the other person the chance to know how you actually feel.
You're robbing them of reality.
You are denying them the opportunity to grow, to reflect, to apologize, or to change their behavior. You are essentially managing their reality without their consent, keeping them in the dark so you don't have to feel uncomfortable.
And this ties directly into one of the most powerful systemic forces we face, the concept of the family myth.
Oh, the family myth is huge.
Every family, whether they realize it or not, operates on a shared mythology. It is the collective PR campaign the family runs both internally to themselves and externally to the neighborhood.
Yes. It is the foundational narrative that gives the family its identity and cohesion.
Like, we are the family that always stays strong. We are the intellectual family. We are the happy, devout family.
We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
We don't need therapy. We handle our own problems. We never go to bed angry. All these slogans.
Now consider what happens mechanically when someone in the family system begins to suffer in a way that directly contradicts the core tenets of that myth.
That's a dangerous spot to be in.
Let's say a family's overarching myth is, we are always strong and successful. But a young adult in that family is battling severe, paralyzing clinical depression.
Or a family's myth is, we stay together forever no matter what, and someone is going through a devastating, incredibly messy divorce.
That person unknowingly becomes a whistleblower.
A whistleblower.
Yeah.
Just by existing in their honest reality, their very presence is an existential threat to the entire foundational mythology of the family.
And this is where we have to bring in family systems theory. In systems theory, you can picture the family as one of those intricate mobiles hanging over a baby's crib.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Every piece is perfectly balanced to keep the structure stable. That's what we call homeostasis.
Right.
If you yank one piece entirely out of alignment, like the whistleblower speaking their truth, the entire mobile shakes violently.
It throws everything off.
The psychological reality is that to stop the terrifying shaking, the family will often vigorously attack the whistleblower to force them back into their assigned place, rather than face the truth and rebuild the mobile.
Because if they accept the truth, the myth breaks.
And if the myth breaks, they have to confront the terrifying reality that they are flawed, vulnerable, and messy.
And the defensive mechanisms they use are fascinating. They don't usually sit down and say, hey, your depression is threatening our collective delusion of perfection.
No, they never say that.
Instead, they use highly specific phrases to discredit the whistleblower. They say, you're just being so dramatic. You're so ungrateful after everything we've provided for you. Or you're just trying to get attention.
It's all about delegitimizing the truth.
But there is one phrase that constantly comes up in these dynamics that I find incredibly revealing. Why are you bringing this up now?
Ah, yes. The ultimate deflection.
It's brilliant in its evasion. When you finally muster the courage to say, the way you criticized my weight growing up really damaged my self-esteem, and a parent responds with, why are you bringing this up now? That was years ago.
It shuts down the conversation immediately.
Right. What they are almost always actually saying is, I don't want to deal with this, ever. I want the statute of limitations to have expired on my mistakes. It is a delay tactic disguised as a logistical question, but it means permanent dismissal.
And we must emphasize the devastating systemic cost of maintaining this family myth. A piece that requires everyone in the house to actively lie to each other isn't love.
It's not.
It is a synchronized performance. And maintaining a performance 24/7 is neurologically exhausting.
Someone always pays the price for that.
Yes. The tragic cost of this is usually paid by the most sensitive, empathetic person in the family system. Often it's the youngest, or the one who is emotionally attuned enough to finally say, I am suffocating. I refuse to carry this silence anymore.
And because they speak up, they become the designated scapegoat. They absorb the toxicity so the myth can live on. So far, we've focused very heavily on the 18 to 35 demographic, the young adults holding back their career changes, their mental health struggles, their shifting worldviews. But to honor our promise of a true 360-degree view, we absolutely need to pivot. We need to talk about the parental mask. Because if young adults hide their struggles, parents hide absolute mountains.
They absolutely do. It is a massive generational phenomenon.
Yeah.
Parents habitually hide crushing financial stress, deep marital fractures, profound life regrets, terrifying physical illnesses.
They just hide their basic flawed humanity.
Yes.
But why? If we've established that silence is so systemically damaging, why do the leaders of the family engage in it so deeply?
Primarily, it is driven by the fear of losing authority and a deeply ingrained, often patriarchal or matriarchal belief that leadership requires absolute invulnerability.
I have to be the rock.
Exactly. If I am the father, the provider, the rock,
Yeah.
I cannot be seen to crumble, because if I crumble, the whole house falls down.
Right.
But look at the long-term unintended consequence of this mask. Think about a father who never, under any circumstances, says the words, I was wrong, I made a mistake. What does that systematically teach the child?
It teaches them that protecting your pride is more important than repairing a relationship.
Or think about a mother who is completely exhausted, running on absolute fumes, but refuses to ever say, "I'm tired," or "I need you guys to help me."
What's the lesson there?
She is silently, powerfully teaching her children that being a good parent requires limitless, boundaryless self-sacrifice until you literally drop.
That is incredibly heavy. Because children are essentially constantly recording. They are absorbing the modeling, not the lectures.
They watch what you do, not what you say.
Right. They watch this behavior and they grow up thinking that adulthood is essentially just a grim endurance test of pretending you have it all together while quietly suffering.
And we cannot ignore the historical and generational context here.
Yeah, let's talk about the boomers and Gen X.
For the parents of the current 18 to 35 demographic, many were raised by the generation that survived the Great Depression or World War II or severe global instability and immigration.
Really hard survival-based times.
In those survival-based environments, they were simply never taught emotional language. The vocabulary for vulnerability wasn't just absent. It was viewed as an active liability.
Wow, an active liability.
Yes. If you are fleeing a war zone or trying to feed 5 kids on a single factory wage, pausing to discuss your emotional boundaries is a luxury you cannot afford.
Right. They know exactly how to put hot food on the table. They know how to endure brutal jobs to ensure you get a good college education. They know how to check the oil in your car before a road trip.
They're very practical.
But they literally, mechanically, do not possess the internal tools to sit down on the couch and say, "I am feeling really inadequate and scared right now," or "I am deeply sorry that my stress hurt your feelings."
Which creates a heartbreaking, tragic misalignment of intentions. You have the young adult sitting in their studio apartment thinking, "My parents don't understand me at all. They don't see who I really am. They only care about my resume."
While the parents are feeling completely unappreciated.
Exactly. Simultaneously, miles away, you have the parents sitting in their living room thinking, "I broke my back for 30 years. I gave you absolutely everything you could ever need so you wouldn't suffer like I did. Why are you still so angry and unhappy with me?"
It's two people desperately shouting across a massive canyon, and neither understands the other's language.
It's a huge divide.
And honestly, this brings us to a tension point that I really want to argue with. I want to play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Let's explore it.
Okay, because when we look at this 18 to 35 demographic, this is a generation that is completely steeped in therapy speak. They know all about boundaries, toxic traits, narcissistic tendencies, and mental health awareness.
They have all the vocabulary.
Aren't they expecting a bit too much? Is it really fair or even logically sound to demand that a parent who survived severe poverty or fled a political regime or grew up with intense normalized emotional neglect suddenly learn how to speak the modern, nuanced language of emotional validation?
You're asking if we're demanding too much.
Yeah. We are basically demanding that they run an emotional marathon when they don't even own running shoes. Maybe their version of saying, "I validate your complex existence and love you deeply," is simply handing you a plate of cut fruit and asking, "Have you eaten today?"
Right, the have you eaten love language.
Exactly. Shouldn't the younger generation just practice some radical acceptance and stop demanding a level of emotional fluency their parents simply cannot provide?
It is a profoundly complex philosophical tension, and you are highlighting a very real friction point. We absolutely must have deep, expansive compassion for the historical and situational context of our parents.
We have to cut them some slack.
We have to recognize and honor their sacrifices and understand the legacy OS they're operating on. However, and this is a massive however, compassion for their past does not negate the reality of the present. Emotional pain is still pain. A wound is a wound, regardless of whether the person who accidentally inflicted it had good intentions or a terrifying childhood themselves.
So you're saying historical hardship doesn't buy you a lifetime exemption from emotional growth?
Exactly. Past sacrifices and historical trauma do not give older generations a free pass to indefinitely silence their children, to invalidate their realities, or to permanently opt out of personal growth.
So compassion isn't the same as just rolling over.
Right.
Yeah.
Compassion means understanding why they act the way they do. It does not mean enabling toxic, painful silence to continue for another 40 years.
So what's the actual resolution? Because if the kid is demanding therapy-level communication to feel safe, and the parent's biological ceiling is literally just, "Have you eaten?" it feels like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Someone has to give.
The resolution is that honesty deeply matters, but it requires profound wisdom and strategic initiation.
What does that mean practically?
If past sacrifices don't excuse present silence, then the burden often falls on the younger generation, the ones who do have the emotional vocabulary, to initiate a new way of speaking.
So we have to take the lead.
You cannot throw your truth at your parents like a weapon to punish them for not understanding you. You have to offer the truth like a bridge. You are inviting them to cross over and meet the real you.
But what if they don't know how to cross?
They might not. They might be terrified of the height of the bridge. They might even panic and try to burn the bridge down. But as the adult child, your responsibility is to build it. If they burn it, you have to find peace in knowing you tried to change the generational pattern.
That transitions us perfectly into the actual practical mechanics of truth-telling. Because if you are listening to this right now and you're thinking, okay, I get it, I need to build the bridge, I have a massive truth I need to bring into my family, and my amygdala is screaming at me not to.
It's scary to actually take the step.
How do you actually do it? How do you bypass the family's legacy communication system?
It begins by completely redefining what emotional safety actually means in a family context. We continually mistake safety for a lack of friction. We think a safe family is a polite family that never argues.
Right. We think quiet means safe.
But as we established earlier, a family that never argues is usually just a terrified, silent family. True emotional safety is a family where people can deeply, passionately disagree, express hurt, and advocate for themselves without destroying the fundamental connection.
It's the confidence that conflict will not result in abandonment.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's walk through the specific toolkit for the truth teller. If you're gearing up for a hard conversation, step 1 is clarity.
You have to know your goal.
Right. You have to rigorously interrogate yourself before you open your mouth. What exactly is the core truth I need to share? Why do I need to share it? And what realistic change am I hoping for?
Right, because if your subconscious goal is just to punish them,
Or to make them feel guilty, or to finally win an argument you've been having in your head for 10 years, you aren't building a bridge, you're just launching a missile.
exactly. Step 2 is timing. And the friction of getting timing wrong is where most of these conversations instantly die.
Timing is everything.
We consistently ignore the cognitive load of the people we are talking to. Do not drop a massive emotional truth bomb like "I'm dropping out of law school" when your parents just walked in the door from a grueling 10-hour shift.
Or when your dad is frustrated trying to fix the Wi-Fi router.
Or when everyone is rushing to get dressed for a holiday party. Emotional processing requires immense neurological bandwidth. If your bandwidth is currently at 0, your truth will bypass their logical brain entirely and be perceived purely as a threat or an attack.
And step 3 involves how we frame our language, specifically moving away from accusatory statements. Now, I know everyone has heard of I statements, and frankly, it can sound like entry-level pop psychology, like, I feel sad when you do X.
But there is deep neurology behind why we have to use them.
If you walk into a room and say, you always make me feel worthless because you constantly compare me to my cousins, you have instantly triggered their biological defense mechanisms.
Absolutely. When you start a sentence with, "you always," or "you never," you induce cognitive dissonance in the listener. They immediately pull up mental evidence of the one time they didn't do the thing you're accusing them of.
Right, they stop listening to your pain and start building their defense case.
Their amygdala flares up and they prepare for battle. The entire argument will now be a litigation of the facts, whether or not they actually compare you to your cousins rather than addressing your emotional pain.
Right, so to bypass that biological threat response, you have to take ownership of the internal feeling. You say, I feel immense pressure and a deep sense of anxiety when my choices are discussed in comparison to others.
You own the feeling.
It's almost impossible to argue with someone's internal subjective feeling. It keeps their prefrontal cortex online instead of triggering their fight or flight response.
But we also have to urgently talk about the person receiving the truth. The listener has a massive defining responsibility here too.
Oh, absolutely. It's a two-way street.
Let's say an adult child gathers all their courage, fights through the regression effect, and says, I felt really lonely and unsupported growing up.
That's a huge thing to say.
The absolute worst, most destructive thing a parent could do in that vulnerable moment is project their own guilt and make it about themselves.
Like getting defensive.
If the parent responds defensively with, oh, so you're saying I was a terrible mother after everything I sacrificed to put a roof over your head, the bridge is instantly incinerated.
The truth teller learns a devastating lesson.
They learn that sharing their pain only results in them having to manage and comfort the parent's fragile ego.
Right. It reverses the roles completely. Now the kid has to console the parent. And to prevent that, there is a specific phrase, a magic response, really, that could literally alter the trajectory of a family's entire generational history.
I wish everyone knew this phrase.
When someone brings you a painful truth, instead of letting your ego defend itself, you take a breath and you say this: I didn't realize you felt that way. Can you help me understand?
Can you help me understand? It is profoundly powerful because it completely disarms the conflict.
It changes the whole vibe in the room.
It shifts the dynamic from a courtroom where one person is on trial and cross-examining the other to a collaborative investigation where two people are standing shoulder to shoulder looking at a problem together.
It's teamwork instead of war.
Exactly. It requires setting aside your ego, tolerating your own discomfort, and prioritizing pure curiosity over the need to be right.
Can you help me understand? Just deploying that curiosity is a massive paradigm shift, and it leads perfectly into the final major concept we need to explore today: decoding the truth beneath the truth.
Listening beyond the immediate words.
Because in family systems, the surface-level dialogue is almost entirely subtext.
This raises a critical question about how we interpret the mechanics of conflict. In families, the argument you are currently having is almost never about the thing you are actually arguing about.
Let's look at some illuminating examples of this subtext.
When a young adult says, I don't want to study this major anymore, the parent, driven by their legacy OS, hears rebellion and financial ruin. But the truth beneath the truth is often, I am terrified that if I choose a different path and fail, you won't love me anymore.
Or when someone says, I don't think I'm going to make it home for the holidays this year, the family hears, you are ungrateful and you don't care about us.
But the actual subtext is,
I do not feel emotionally safe in that environment, and I don't have the energy to wear my armor for 4 days straight. Or the most common, most heartbreaking lie of all, I'm fine.
the subtext of I'm fine.
I am completely drowning, but I don't know how to ask for your help without feeling like an unbearable burden.
To hear that subtext, to translate the pain beneath the anger, requires a tremendous amount of humility. And humility is incredibly difficult to access in a family system because everyone shares so much dense, complicated history.
Right. When your sister snaps at you and says, you never listen to me, she isn't just annoyed about the last 5 minutes of conversation.
Got it all.
That simple 5-word sentence is carrying 10 years of historical pain and perceived slights. Or, you always choose them over me. Or, I knew you wouldn't understand.
If you treat those phrases as isolated, standalone incidents, you're missing the entire point.
If families only litigate the specific micro moments, arguing about who said what with what tone of voice at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, they completely miss the decade-long emotional pattern pulsing underneath the argument.
You have to look at the macro patterns over the micro moments. You have to possess the emotional maturity to pause and ask yourself, what is the historical wound that this current, seemingly trivial argument is aggravating?
So, as we pull all of these complex threads together, what does this all mean? We have journeyed through the paradox of lying out of misguided love, the explosive clash between safety as stability versus safety as authenticity.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We've looked at the crushing weight of disappointment, the fragility of the family myth, the heavy burden of the parental mask, and the neurological mechanics of building a bridge of truth.
It means that family love is undeniably powerful, but it is deeply inherently complicated by the invisible scripts we inherit, the myths we aggressively uphold to feel safe, and the undeniable reality that the people closest to us hold the absolute greatest power to hurt us.
But I love how we can redefine the ultimate role here. For so long, we've been sold this glossy, cinematic image of the perfect family.
Right, the sitcom family.
But the clinical reality is that a truly healthy family is not a family with no secrets, no conflict, and no hard, messy conversations. That is a sterile fantasy.
It doesn't exist.
A genuinely healthy family is simply an ecosystem where people can bring the messy, complicated, uncomfortable, highly inconvenient truth into the room and still feel completely assured that love has a permanent place there.
It is a space where the foundation of love is vast enough and strong enough to hold the weight of the truth, even when that truth is deeply disappointing or frightening to the legacy operating system.
And if you are listening to this right now, especially if you are in that 18 to 35 crucible, staring down a massive truth you are terrified to share, I want you to remember that you don't need to engineer a massive, dramatic, movie scene confession to start healing the dynamic.
You don't have to do it all at once.
You don't need to drop a 50-page manifesto on the Thanksgiving table. It begins with one honest sentence. to test the waters and bypass the amygdala.
Just one sentence.
You can literally just say, I want to tell you something, but I'm really afraid of how you're going to react. Or, I have something to share with you. I don't need you to fix it, and I don't need advice right now. I just need you to listen to me. That is how you lay the very first plank of the bridge.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over as you go about your day. We have spent this entire deep dive thoroughly unpacking the fear of sharing your authentic truth with your family.
The visceral fear of their disappointment, their anger, their rejection.
But I want you to consider the alternative. If you spend your entire life successfully playing the role your family wrote for you, just to keep the artificial peace, when you finally look in the mirror, decades from now, whose reflection will actually be staring back at you?
Wow.
And will that person know how to be loved for who they genuinely are, or only for the mask they so perfectly learned to wear?
When you think back to that moment, sitting across from your family in the car and they asked, are you doing okay? What would happen if, just once, you let the x-ray show the broken bone? What would happen if you took a breath, bypassed the panic, and said, actually, no, I'm not. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay empathetic, and we'll see you next time.